guys were saying, like this tree right here is dead because it got a disease. It got an invasive disease called blister rust that was brought to this country, and it kills a whole bunch of trees. So these trees are dead. Look at this right here. This is a nasty invasive weed called kudzu that you find in places like the southeastern states like Alabama and Florida. And look at that. It just covers everything. This kudzu smothers trees, and it smothers other plants, and it even smothers, into the wetlands, and just covers everything and kills it, right? And then here's a good example. Anybody know what this guy is?
I think you guys read about this in your thing about Florida and the invasive species. Who
Burmese python.
Ah.
Yeah. And what do pythons do that's nasty?
They eat everything that they come across.
Precisely. Yeah, so like the Everglades National Park in Florida, a beautiful national park with all sorts of amazing wetlands and stuff. Now it's got all these huge snakes. And these snakes even eat deer and alligators. It's incredible. Look how big they are. How'd you like to come across a snake?
Would they be able to eat a child or something?
Well, yeah, a young child could be eaten by a snake. I don't think it's happened, but it's happened in other countries. So that's not good.
My brother has a bald python.
I know, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Hey, does anybody know what's happening with this pipe? Why is that a problem? Because of invasive species.
Are those swirl wasps?
These are zebra mussels. So these are invasive little shellfish, little shells, little mussels, and they multiply, and they get so numerous inside pipes that they clog up all the pipes.
Are they cicadas?
No, cicadas are not invasive. Most of them are not. So they're fine. But these guys are zebra mussels, and they're clogging your pipes. So if you're a factory, like if you're a nuclear power plant and you need to suck up some water to cool your nuclear power plant, and suddenly your water pipe is full of zebra mussels, that is a big problem, isn't it? So that's a big problem.
It might actually blow up.
It could blow up, exactly. Here's another problem with invasive plants. So like these over here, like here's that Scotch broom we were talking about that's not a native plant, or here's English ivy. And look at their roots. Their roots are not as big as the roots of native plants. So what problems does that cause? Anybody know?
It causes the soil to not be as strong.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Now, if you get some rain, look at that. The roots over here of these invaders are not holding the soil in place as well as the roots of these native species. So yeah, that's exactly right. That's a big problem. And how about this? Well, go ahead with a couple of questions now, Ms. Laws.
You're muted.
Sorry, go ahead, Alaya.
How do you get zebra mussels in your pipes?
Well, they're just in the water. So these zebra mussels are just in the water, and they crawl into pipes, and they start breeding in pipes, and then so many are born that they just clog up the pipes.
Cool. And then I think there was a question from Abby about cicadas. She asked, what are cicadas?
Oh, cicadas are insects that stay underground for a long time, and then they emerge as these kind of little flying sort of cricket
They
guys.
stay in the ground for 17 years, and then they
Years, I know, and the latest hatch of cicadas is going on the East Coast. But those are native insects, so they're pretty cool. They're cool native insects. But like, look at this. This is an invader plant species. And if you had a nice lake, suddenly you have no lake. There's not even a lake. All these invasive plants ate this lake. Isn't that terrible? And then like here, even in Oregon, in southeastern Oregon, we've got this really cool refuge called Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. And it has this really shallow lake that used to have thousands and thousands of birds in it. And this lake was wonderful for birds. But the problem is these fish, anybody know what this invader fish is? What is it?
The fish that eats the birds.
Is it the carp?
The birds, but yeah, that's right. It's a carp. These are invasive carp. And what these carp do is they forage around on the bottom of this shallow lake. So they shuffle in the mud of the shallow lake and they stir up all of the mud, and that destroys all the food for the birds, for these birds. So rather than this beautiful lake with all sorts of wonderful food and habitat for birds, you just get this big muddy pond with dead carp, and it's nasty. So that's a big problem in that wildlife refuge in Oregon. So let's go to this question. How do all these invasive critters get here? What ways do invasive critters get here?
I think I know one.
How?
So pretty much like how you say.
Pretty
You
much
can bring bunnies from Brazil, just example, and pretty much it goes on a ship and then it goes all the way to Africa.
Sure. So people can transfer them around. Why would people bring a bunny from like Europe to Australia, for example?
As a pet.
As a pet. Yeah. So like people that lives in Australia, they brought rabbits as pets to Australia, and then they let them go. And then the rabbits went crazy because they had no predators, and they just overran everything and ate everything up and are a super big invasive problem. So the pet trade, and like Ms. Laws was saying, even kids. So even when school kids got bullfrogs for tadpoles and then took them home and let them go, that's one reason we have bullfrogs all over the place in Oregon, and it's bad. Anybody else have any ideas of how invasive species get here?
I have an idea.
Subi said ship. Subi, do you want to explain how the ship part works?
Maybe they could get it through like some sort of boxes, or accidentally one of those animals from there could get on the ship and come.
Well, you're right. Actually, see these sorts of crates, like if a factory in China is shipping us toys or something like that, they might put them in these wooden shipping crates and they ship them over to the United States on a boat. But buried in the wood in this crate might be the eggs of an insect, like a longhorn beetle. And when that crate is now sitting in a port in the United States, the beetle larva chews its way out and becomes a full-fledged adult beetle and flies off and starts destroying all the forests in the United States. So that's a way that invasive species get here. Any other ways?
Emily, go ahead.
I think it's the picture on the top right. I think that it's when people they don't know that they have a plant in their yard that's invasive, and then they keep on watering it, it will keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Emily. So a lot of gardeners, some gardeners will even go out and buy species like ivy or something like that are actually invasive species. So a lot of species we brought here, not really knowing that they would become invasive species, like that laurel hedge, remember? People planted, we have a laurel hedge in our backyard that people planted, but those are invasive species, and then they kind of get out of control. So that's exactly right.
I have one more idea.
Well,
Okay,
Ryan, just a minute,
Alaya.
because Ryan, wait a minute, because Alaya's been raising her hand and waiting patiently. So it's
Go
really
ahead, Alaya.
Alaya, go ahead.
So I know how sometimes boats go fishing with big nets.
Yeah.
So maybe somehow some tiny animals got in the mix, and then when they put them on the ship, they brought the big net, but they didn't realize things from the ocean that could destroy our planet were in there.
Well, you know what? You're exactly right. And it's that can happen with nets. That's true. But it can also happen like some ships, a lot of cargo ships, for example, they need to be a little bit heavier to make them stable. So they suck up a bunch of water and they use it for what it's called ballast. And then when they go to a port somewhere else, they'll flush out that ballast water and like this. And so they're flushing out the ballast water from somewhere else. But in that water, there might be little eggs or little fish or little critters. And now they're getting introduced to the water in like Oregon. And now they become invaders. So that is a problem. So what can we do about invasive species? What can we do to try to stop them? Anybody know? How do we get rid of them?
I've got a couple of hands raised. So Riad has been waiting, and so has Akash. So Riad, go ahead.
We can stop using boats.
Well, we don't really have to stop using boats, but now if your family has a small boat that you like to cruise around in on the Willamette River or something like that, but you had that boat, let's say you were moving from Chicago to Oregon and you're bringing your boat. When you're coming into Oregon, now they have these inspection stations. And so people like this who work for the government will inspect your boat to make sure that your boat doesn't have any invasive species hiding in it, like zebra mussels or something like that. So we have these inspection stations to inspect boats to make sure that we're not transferring invasive aquatic critters around. How else can we get rid of invasive species?
Akash, go ahead and unmute.
Another way is to like deroot them, or to hunt them in a well-mannered way, or like hunt them but not like too much, so like we can like decrease them bit by bit.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So you see good examples of that here. Like you guys can go out and help to get rid of invasive species, even right here in our parks. Like this sign, for example, this sign is asking for volunteers to go out and pull ivy out of our parks and help native forests by getting rid of the ivy. And we just have to go out and pull it up. So if you're ever out on a hike and you see some ivy like that on the ground, go ahead and just reach down and yank it out. And you can make as much ivy as you want. And Akash, you are exactly right. Sometimes we go out and we unfortunately have to kill invasive critters. We have to kill non-native critters. Like we talked about those nutria. Some states pay people to go out and kill nutria. And it's not nice for individuals, but overall for the environment, it's good to get rid of these invaders. And sometimes there's so many of them that we just have to go out and kill them. Like those pythons too, the only way to control them is we have to go out and kill them. Alexander, you had a question.
Well, so you know those squirrels you see in your backyard?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are invasive eastern squirrels, and they're invasive species that overpowered the western red squirrels. Western red squirrels have like a red belly, sort of. So yeah, now all you see today in your backyard is eastern squirrels.
Alexander, that is awesome. You are exactly right. And do you know what I really like about what you said is that really you have, because you're smart and you know about invasive species, you have a whole new way of seeing things. Like most people, when they look out and they see squirrels, they're like, oh, look at that cute squirrel, because they don't really know what they're seeing. But when you look out and you see a squirrel, you say, look at that. That's an invasive eastern squirrel that has displaced our native squirrels. And you see the world in a different way. And that is great. That's the way an ecologist or an environmental lawyer might see the world. And you're well on your way to not, then when you see the world in a new way, then you can try to come up with ways to fix it, right? So I love that, Alexander. That is
The
great.
eastern squirrels like are really fat and they eat everything. They're way bigger than the they're like kind of this big compared to the western squirrel.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
That big, yeah.
And so finally, the last thing that we could do is we could protect the habitat for native species like salmon and species like those squirrels that Alexander is talking about, those native Oregon squirrels. If you protect their forest habitat, that's where they do best, because that's where they're best adapted to live. So if we protect habitat for native species, that's when another good way to keep those invaders away. And here's some cool native species that are going to have to do most of the work to prevent exotic invasive species and to do something about them. So just by learning about invasive species, you will be in a good position to recognize the problem and do something to solve it in the future. So yay, that's my favorite native species right there. Good job, you guys. You are awesome. And I think I'm going to have to go now because I have to teach my own kids. They're a little bit bigger, but
Can you stop your share so we can see the kids and see if anybody has any burning questions for you before you leave?
I'll stop my share.
Thank you, Professor Rohlf. You guys, does anybody have any burning questions for Professor Rohlf before he goes? Okay, what do we say to him for coming and talking to us?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great.
Right. Have a good day. See you at lunchtime downstairs.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, awesome job, you guys. You know a lot about that. So that's what we're reading about. If none of that sounded familiar, then I'm guessing you haven't done your reading lesson yet this week, because that's what it was about. So very cool. I wanted to go through a few things, business type things, and share some exciting news. So the first item of business is that somebody's got their mic on, clanging about. There we go. First item of business is that in science, you guys were doing those 5 science lessons on renewable energy this week. And then next week, we're going to go back to social studies. So we'll be starting a social studies unit on government, the way government is organized. And it's Florida government, but it also fits for Oregon government. You're going to do a little research on that. And at the end of that project, the social studies project, there's actually an invitation to plan a service project. And I've set aside a week for you to take action. We did this in the fall, but we didn't have it part of Florida Virtual. This time it starts with Florida Virtual telling you to think about a project. And today's science, or tomorrow's science lesson, Kids Can Make a Difference, is also kind of asking you to think about what you can do. And I'm going to actually give you a week where you can plan and do a service project. It can be something little like picking up litter in your neighborhood, or something bigger, but that's going to come up in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. We'll have a whole week where that's what we're focused on. So that's the first thing in science. And then the second thing is you have book clubs tomorrow. So please prep for that. Get ready for your book club. And the final thing is we are on our last 2 days of our informational book. And I just wanted to remind you of how we go about making sure our books are perfect before we turn them in. And if you remember, I did a little lesson with glasses. And I said, when we get to the end of a book, it's kind of like we need to think to ourselves, well, what things do I need to check? Well, the first thing I need to do is make sure that my book has everything in it that's on that list that's on week 1 of informational writing. So I'm going to go to week 1 and I'm going to go down the checklist with my glasses that check to make sure I've got everything. And I'm going to use these lenses and I'm going to read to make sure I have an introduction, check. Make sure I have table of contents, check. Make sure I have 3 subtopics, check. A mini story, a conclusion, about the author, a list of the books or the sources I used, some pictures, and I'm just going to check off all those boxes, make sure they're right. Then I'll take off my is my project complete glasses, and I'll ask myself, when I read this, does it make sense? Do the words make sense? And I'll put on my does it make sense glasses, and I'll read it again, this time looking just to make sure, does it make sense? Are all the sentences complete? Do they make sense? Then when I'm done rereading it a second time, I will put on my checking for punctuation. Like, do I have sentences with capital letters and end marks and commas and dialogue quotation marks and paragraphs and proper nouns capitalized? So this time I'm going to put on my is everything a-okay glasses, and I'm going to read through. I'm going to check, does it have capital letters? Is it indented? Does it have paragraphs? Is everything I can't do that, a-okay, right? Oh, now I've read it 3 times. Am I done? No, I'm not done. I'm going to go take a break, have lunch, then I'm going to read it a 4th time. This time, I want to know, how does it sound? Like, is it just sound boring? Do I need to add some figurative language to make it sound like music, like these guitars? Do I need to add some similes or metaphors, or maybe something where I do hyperbole and I exaggerate, or maybe add some idioms or some alliteration where all the words start with the same sound? Sally sells seashells by the seashore. All those figurative language tricks that we know to make something sound better. I want to go through and read it and make sure I've got that in there. Okay, I've checked to make sure it's complete. I've checked back to make sure that everything sounds good, that it has like full sentences and everything makes sense. I checked my punctuation to make sure I've got capital letters and end marks and proper spelling and paragraphs. I read it a 4th time to make sure I added some figurative language and made it sound good. Now I would like to have one other person read it to make sure it sounds good, or I would like to read it out loud to somebody to make sure it sounds good. Make sure it's got the pictures, make sure everything's right. So I just put on my final proofreader glasses and I asked my mom or dad or sister or brother to either read it or listen to me reading it. And I do one final proofreading of it before I push that submit button. Then in week 4, you'll see that there's a submit button at the top of the page. That's where you're going to submit the whole project. If you've already shared a link with me, I'd still like you to share it again, just because when I'm going down and correcting it and I come to an empty assignment, it takes a lot of time for me to leave the assignment, go to my email, and try to find your project. So if you could please submit a link to your slideshow or your project. If you have written the book by hand, I think there's just a couple of you doing it that way on paper. Here's what I'd like you to do. When you just hold it up like that, it's really hard for me to read it. So if you don't mind recording yourself reading the book, that would be really awesome. Or at least record yourself talking through all the pages and then holding them up and then saying, on this page, I did this, and holding it up, because it's really hard for me to read the projects otherwise. So then you're going to submit it by Saturday. And then next week, I'm going to schedule you guys, and you'll see on the schedule that about 10 of you are going each day. Do I have volunteers who are think they're going to be completely done enough to be the first ones to present on Monday? It's like Clara, Elizabetta, Raina. Let me see here. M. Just a sec. Let me get my thing. So Clara, Elizabetta, M, Raina. Any boys? Looking for boys. I'm not seeing you because I took my glasses off and now I can't see anything. Here we go. Here we go.
Miss Laws, I'll do it.
Cash and Raed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who else? Alaya. 8. I need 2 more volunteers. Come on, folks. Volunteer and then you'll have it done with on Monday. Anybody else feel like they're pretty close to done? And, oh, Akash. Akash, how did I make you host? That's really weird.
Maybe a hacker came and did it.
No, I think I must have did it all accident.
I think he changed himself.
Guys. Oh, he might have just did that. Okay, I think that's it. We'll just have those. So Clara, Elizabetta, M, Raina, Gagan, Akash, Raed, and Alaya. You guys are all on Monday. Akash, keep yourself muted. You're too loud. Okay. All right, so that's Monday. You're going to present your books. And then the rest of you will present your books on either Tuesday or Thursday. Next week will be mostly listening to people's books and having presentations. So everyone will present their book next week. So make sure you've got it done and maybe even practice what you're going to present. You're going to have about 5 minutes to present, so you might not have time to read your whole book. I wouldn't recommend reading it. You might read a part, like pick your favorite part, the part you think sounds good, and read that part, or read 1 or 2 parts and then just show pages and kind of teach your topic. So that's next week. Very exciting celebration of all your hard work. And now let's see, I think now we're ready for the very last 2 things. 1, I'm really sorry if you got all ready for it and you're excited, but I have to cancel art class today or art club at 12:30 because I have to go somewhere. And so I'm going to have to be driving and I can't do the art class. I'll move it to next week and I promise we'll do it next week. And the last thing is I'm going to share my screen, and you might have seen this already. I don't want that. I want basic. Here we go. Desktop share. Okay. Did you let Clara in? There we go. Okay. So here is my screen, and I wanted to show you this. Next week, starting on Tuesday. Oh no, I'm signed out. That's ridiculous. We are going to have 4th grade. As far as I know, it's only 4th grade right now. Every week we'll have a drop-off time from 2:30 to 3:30. If you've ever been to where Flex is located at, it used to be called Timberland, now it's called Tumwater School. There's like a place where you drive past the office, and then if you keep going straight, it goes to this roundabout with a fence and a bus stop, and that's where you can go into the fields and back. That's where your parents can drop you. We'll have a teacher right there to check you in. We'll have to check you in, make sure you're there. And you have to wear a mask. And we're going to play games and have art and science activities and just kind of fun stuff for kids for an hour every week. You don't have to sign up or anything. Your parents can drop you whenever it's convenient. They don't have to tell us. And there is actually a porta potty now. Yay. We are not going to be meeting on the 4th because they have that spaces taken. You're going to wear a mask, maintain 3 feet space at all times, dress for the weather, although we do have a covered area. If you have an inhaler that you need to have with you, or an EpiPen for allergies to bee stings, you need to have your parent contact me and make sure we've arranged for that. And they'll have to give that to me and I'll hold on to it. But that is happening starting this coming Tuesday. So any of you who can get your parents talked into it, I sent this note to your parents today. They can just drop you off at that time. They can just drive up in their car. They don't have to park, and check you in with the teacher. And then when it's time to go at 2:30 or at 3:30, we'll just line up at that fence and they can pick you up again. If somebody is picking you up who's different from your parent, you have to have a note saying you can go home with them, just like regular school. Okay, what questions do I have about that? Oh, and I told Jaden this morning, if you're a kid who's feeling bummed right now because you know you're not going to be able to do it, you're not going to be able to come in. Either your parents can't get you there at that time, or maybe you have a medical condition that makes it hard. We are going to plan something else fun for the people who can't come in person. So if you can't come in person and you have some cool ideas of something fun you'd like to do online, we will make a new club of people, maybe in the evening. We could have a movie group where we all watch movies together and chat, or
I have a good idea.
you have a good idea. What is it, Jaden? Well, you can tell me later, Jaden, okay? Okay, but you guys think about that and let me know if you're a person who can't come in and you want to join that club instead, okay? But that's starting on Tuesday, and I'll be there and I'll get to see you guys. Yay! All right. We can't have your siblings come because it's this weird rule about COVID where you can't mix cohorts. So we can only have fourth graders together.
I know the phones are getting friends to make them get mad, so.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that's it for today. The last thing is that I made a few breakout rooms. Jaden and Deckard, I'd like you guys to go to breakout room 1, and your grandma can join you in there later, okay? So go ahead and go to breakout room 1, Jaden and Deckard. I think, Alaya, you're gonna stay with me, but if anyone else would like to go to breakout rooms and chat for a little bit with your friends, you can do that. I don't have anything planned today.
It doesn't show the breakout rooms.
Really? When you click more, you don't see breakout rooms?
Mm-mm.
I see them, so I will, oh, that's interesting. It says not started. Okay, let's try that.
Oh, there we go.
Look now. Okay, so room 1 is gonna be Jaden and Deckard, and then the rest of the rooms, anybody who wants to can go to them.
Hey guys, remember our group from yesterday? Should we do the same groups?
So just go ahead and go to room 2 with whoever else wants to go there. If it gets too crowded, like if there's more than 5 people, I'd suggest some of you move to the next room.
Do we have to go to breakout
No,
rooms?
you do not have to go to breakout rooms. If you want to go, you can go.
Nora, after I'm done with my math thing,
Then
go to Alex breakout room.
Hey guys, who wants to go to breakout room 2 like yesterday?
Okay, Nora, go to breakout room 3.
Alex, breakout.
Really noisy. Okay. Akash, just go to room 2.
Alex, want to go to breakout room 6?
Are there 6?
Mm.
Okay.
They'll hang out with all the bed and stuff. Anyway, so.
Sure.
All right. Yeah.
When I first saw our guest speaker, I thought he looked like your husband because I remember seeing him from the wildlife safari.
Oh yeah, was he at that? That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I was tricking you. Hey, Subi, did you ever ask your mom? Oh, are you still there? About what day we're gonna do the lunch thing?
She's asking about what day we're gonna do the lunch thing.
Wednesdays then அவங்க சொன்னாங்க
Come
not
here,
next
come.
Wednesday afterwards.
April
April 14th I'm going out.
April 14th, my mom's busy. I think maybe the Wednesday after April 14th. I don't remember the
Okay.
date.
Actually, it's the 21st. It's my birthday, and I think I have a meeting that day, so I don't think I can do the 21st. So how about the one after that? 28th? The 28th? Okay.
Yes,
April
fine.
28th. Okay. Great. Thanks, Subi. I'll tell you who's in what room right now. We've got Deckard and Jaden in 1. We have Elijah, Elizabeth, Gagan, and Raina in 5. And we have Akash, Alex, and Nora in 6.
I think I'm actually gonna go finish my
Okay.
info.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Kavai, did you have a question, buddy, or do you want to go to one of the breakout rooms? Kavai?
I'm gonna talk to Miss Lois. Here you go.
Okay.
Wait. There you go.
Hello.
Hey, Kavai.
Hello.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi. Kai said because one of his fish died.
Yeah, he told me that in the chat. That's too bad. That is
Yeah.
part of why what we learn with fish, though, isn't it?
Yeah, they sometimes they just don't last very long.
We don't.
It's difficult. They're so beautiful. They're
That's
so
right.
beautiful.
I'm sorry about that, Kavai.
Yeah, so he,
And I only have one glowfish left, and he's all alone. And
Oh, are you gonna get another one?
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sad. You know, I have goldfish outside in a pond, and I was so excited because they were doing so well. And then I left for the weekend, and my neighbor overfed them.
uh-oh.
Overfeeding fish is bad. I think 10 of them died. I was so, so, but they made it through the winter, the other 10, so that's good.
Wow.
You don't even feed them in the winter. They just sit in the pond in the cold.
Oh, I didn't know they were that hardy.
Well, they're super
Wow.
hardy. Yeah. Yeah.
By golly. By golly. Well, we'll have to get busy on Kavai's Bridges book. He read all the books on Epic about bridges, but now he has to write more.